Welcome to this week's episode of the Let's Talk Boxing podcast. Guys, as always, I'm your host, Luke Simbox, and I'm joined by Josh from JTH Boxing. He's drinking a weird drink tonight, so we should be in for a good episode. It's a busy episode. We've got plenty to talk about, plenty to look back on, plenty to look forward to. I'm really excited to get into this podcast. And before we get going, guys, if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment, let us know how you think the podcast went. If you're listening to us on Spotify or an Apple Podcast or any other leading platform, please leave us a review, give us a share, it all helps. But away from that, back to the boxing. It was a dramatic weekend this past weekend. It was the rematch. It was Joyce Zhang 2. It's split opinion. Was it going to be repeat? Was it going to be revenge? And the answer was emphatically repeat, and even more emphatic than the first time around. Zhang crushed the hopes and dreams of Joe Joyce via a third round one-punch knockout. It was totally shocking. We didn't think we'd see Joe Joyce in that kind of manner of being hurt and being down. First time in his 17-fight pro career. Josh, I'm running away on a tangent already. You know how we do on this podcast. I'm going to chuck it over to you and your weird drink. How's things?
Not too bad. First of all, I want to comment, it's not a weird drink, it's just Vimto. It's just a different flavour of Vimto, I promise you. Listen, if any more of these comments, I'll go downstairs and I'll get it out of the cupboard. I'm not
Guys,
having
just
this.
let us know in the comments below. Send us your picture of your Vimto, because Vimto in Manchester does not look
It's,
like Vimto in
it's
Nottingham.
a different flavour. It's not the black. It's a different flavour. What can you say? We do it differently in the Midlands. But no, on the whole, I'm good. Bit tired still after Saturday. Putting in the graft at Zhang Joyce. Had an absolute heart attack that I've not actually, because we had our little chat off camera, and I forgot to tell you about the little heart attack that I had on the way home. So I've left Wembley about, I want to say, 20 to midnight. My coach was at 25 past midnight. I was like, I want to give myself plenty of time. So originally my plan was book an Uber. So I had an Uber booked, hadn't obviously paid yet. Uber just never turned up. They just couldn't seem to find one near me. So I was like, right, we're gonna have to go get the underground. Obviously, I knew the underground would be running. I got there, got to platform 5 at Wembley Park, and it's like, all right. So I looked on Google Maps the whole week. Since I found out I was going, I'd been checking every day to make sure there'll be no delays. Got there, sat down and waited, and the screen turned off. And obviously, the screen was off when I was there on the Thursday for the press. I was like, this is fine. So I looked on Google just to make sure it was coming. It said the Metropolitan line had stopped running. My heart sank to the bottom of my chest because it was this fear I had all week of, if I don't leave on time, I'm going to get stuck in London. I'm going to be there all night. I'm not going to get home until 11 o'clock the next morning. Got so I phoned my mum instantly. I was like, Mum, I might be fucked. The Metropolitan line stopped running. Luckily, literally behind me, there was another one that goes to Finchley Road. Got there, luckily got on the coach. My reserved seat was taken. I was sat on some horrible little edge seat next to the toilet. People don't know how to close the doors on the coach either. I had some woman with about 13 children on the back, every single one of them screaming. It is half past midnight at this point. I've been up since 6 o'clock Saturday morning. I'm knackered. My headphones aren't doing me any favors. I put music on, I can still hear the kids screaming. Um, Tried to watch the Matchroom show in Orlando. Didn't have the fucking energy to watch it, so I was like, I'll just close my eyes. Fell asleep for an hour, my phone in my hand. Phone's nearly on fire. My body's on fire because I'm just sweating. And I was like, oh, I'll go back to sleep. But when you have that 90-minute, not even like a 60-minute little power nap, and after that, you can't sleep for hours. That's exactly what happened. So from 1:30 until 4 o'clock when I got off the coach, I was hot. I was uncomfortable. My head was hurting. And instead, I had to just sit there and watch Sandy Ryan get absolutely fucking robbed, and Conor Benn come back to some man who made his debut at light flyweight but could literally throw a bus at him and he would still take it like it's nothing. That's probably where Joe Joyce's chin is now. It's slowly passed into that Mexican man instead. Um, that's my tangent done though. That's my weekend described. And yeah, let's actually talk about some actual boxing now.
Of course. So, as I say, Joe Joyce is. We thought in the build-up that he could lose, that we could see him be defeated. I went out of my way to say that I was confident in Joe Joyce getting the win, simply because I thought there was too much riding on it for him, that he couldn't have been as bad as last time. And as it turned out, it was worse than last time. You know, the first time around back in April, he was systematically broken down by Zhang. But we looked at the weight back in April as a way of trying to justify what had happened, that he'd come in too light, that his punch resistance wasn't there. All these things conspired for Joe Joyce to put in a career worst performance in the first fight against Zhang, and then this time he comes in, and this is where I started to worry a little bit, Josh. And it was after we recorded our predictions. I'm not going to be an after timer, I stuck by my prediction, but I actually had a bet on Joe Joyce as well, but we won't go there. I've been ridiculed on social media enough, both on Twitter and on my personal social medias. But when he came in, I think was it 24, almost 25 pounds heavier this time around, and he did.
I've got the weight up on my screen. I've literally got BoxRec next to me.
Mm.
So in the first fight, against Zhang, he came in at 256, and then the second fight he's coming at 281 and a quarter pounds.
Yeah,
So
it's not.
massive weight difference.
And what struck me was, and this is moving into the fight, that back in April, he seemed to come in lighter, but then wanted to stand and trade, and he was outfought, outthought, and outpunched by Zhang. This time, he come in much, much heavier, but then decided to move. Surely if you're coming in lighter, that's you built to move, and if you come in heavier, that's you built to be the juggernaut and go back to what you know and slug it out. But he started, moving to his left, away from that southpaw, straight left of Zhang, which was commendable. But you could see as early as that first round, Josh, not much happened, but he was overly obsessed with the left hand of Zhang, and ultimately it was that neglect of the right hand that was his undoing, because we moved into the second round. He took some heavy shots, and you're like, oh, here we go again, which is before the Zhang fights. Joe Joyce is getting his head pinged back. You're like, oh, this is what happens. This Joe Parker done it with some big shots. Christian Hamer done it with some big shots. But it just seems to be something about Zhang that he's the kryptonite to Joe Joyce. And when he lands, you're literally like, oh shit, like it's happening again. Moving to that third round. And it was a huge shot. That shot would have knocked out a horse. It would have knocked out an elephant. It was brutal. And there was something quite tragic seeing Joe Joyce sprawled out the way he was. You was in the arena. You can tell us in a second how it felt in the arena, the kind of atmosphere change when that happened. But even now, I've watched it back a couple of times, still in shock. Josh, take us through your thoughts. You was there. You was live and direct in the arena. How did it feel? Like, what was the general feel? Start with the ring walk, because he seemed there a little bit apprehensive, didn't he? A little bit nervous. He's got all that added weight. Take us through what you was feeling at that point.
Well, so where I was stood, I wasn't actually in my actual seat because they had it laid out differently. So they had inner ringside media, and then they had some media sat just in the general floor block where you sit with your fans. My seat was obviously on the floor, but I wasn't in a ringside. I'm not that big. So I was sat there, and I was just people all around you, and then I'm just trying to watch the fight. So I'll just move to the backstage bit. So we've watched Joyce walk through the backstage bit to go to do the ring walk. Was playing before the ring walk. Never seen a man been able to get a crowd of 10,000 people to actually all sing along as well. But the whole crowd was singing along. And obviously, as soon as I heard, I couldn't actually see Joyce's face because they weren't actually showing it on the big screens in the arena. But as soon as you heard the usual big juggernauts, as soon as you heard his song play, I was like, he means business this time. So he didn't walk out to it last time. And whenever you hear big juggernaut, you're like, right, he means business. He's going for war. Obviously, Zhang's ring walk, I got a bit more of a better glimpse with Zhang's because I tried to follow Joyce with his ring walk, but I couldn't walk directly behind him, so I tried to walk alongside. So I couldn't quite see his face. He looked quite confident backstage, but maybe as soon as he got in front of that crowd, obviously, you got to think he was in a position that he's never been in before. Every single fight he's gone into as the favourite, undefeated record. And I've been saying this in every interview I've done the last week. He's been known his whole career as this unbreakable juggernaut who only gets better as the fight goes on, with a chin that just doesn't seem to crumble under anything. Whereas this time he was walking in with a chin that's been cracked a little bit, not necessarily this unbreakable juggernaut anymore, because you could hit him with everything before and his face wouldn't react to it. Like you wouldn't see a drop of blood come out. Whereas this time we saw his nose bleed, we saw his eyes swell up. It was a completely different situation as to what he's been put in. Obviously, as a career heaviest as well, you've got to remember that. So it was a much different scenario as to what he's normally been in. Obviously, first bell goes, it's like, Joyce starts to look confident, the whole crowd backing him. Obviously, you're never going to really get a big fight like that, sell out. There was a fair bit curtained off, but there was still quite a big crowd there. Everyone was behind Joyce, apart from the 50 people waving around Chinese flags, but they made themselves known, to be fair. Like that 50 people stood out more than the fucking 9,550 there for Joyce. Um, yeah, the fight got started. Obviously, we all know how the fight went. So I'll just skip past. Obviously, we've all watched it. But in the arena when he started getting tagged up in the second, um, the arena was starting to fall silent. You could hear people, you could hear people start to get a little bit anxious. Um, so it was a bit like, oh, what's like? We thought he was going to switch up, Like we said this last week on the podcast, if he's coming in heavier, he's going to try and trade, and he just didn't do that. Um, something that I'll never understand is why did he come in with a Philly shell as well? I don't understand that, but I don't know. Obviously, Zhang's team said that they had a spy in the camp. Um, I mean, take that what you want. I find it's quite an interesting comment. I kind of wish they said that a little bit earlier because I don't know if they said it on the press conference day. If they did, I would have loved to follow up on that with Zhang's coach because I did get an interview with him. What a guy, by the way. That's the only reason why I'm kind of happy that Zhang won. Because when you got that connection with someone and you've spoke to that person, I was quite happy for them. But when Joyce went down in that third round, it was for me. It's like I kind of just felt empty. Like my whole body kind of just went numb because it was like we've never seen him in this position. We've never. It's not even like it was just he's took a knee. Like when you look at Daniel Dubois, let's say he took a knee. It was like he chose to go down, whereas Joyce didn't choose to go down. He got hit with one of the at the time what seemed because I couldn't see it properly, but obviously the whole coach ride home. I sat there, I probably watched it about 40 times on the way home. But that right hand landed so cleanly. And I stand by this statement. I'll stand by it till the day I die. If that hook landed on any other heavyweight, they would not have got up from that. The fact Joyce was even able just to climb to his feet. Obviously, I know obviously the ref waved off, but he was just able to climb to his feet. It baffles me. Um, but I think the whole arena kind of just went a little bit numb. It was like we've never seen this. We didn't expect this. Like we knew this was going to be a fight that wouldn't go the distance, but we all kind of assumed it was going to be Zhang that was going to go down and go out. Obviously, I don't think people because everyone was so focused on Joyce's weight. I think people kind of forgot that Zhang also came in heavier. He came in at nearly 287. That's 10 pounds added on to last time. You kind of see what the game plan was. It was going to be a much more. I'm not going to say explosive fight because none of them are explosive punches. They're just heavy-handed. But you knew someone was going to go down. And just after the fight, the arena cleared out faster than what it did in April when he lost. As soon as he went down, the fight was done. Everyone cleared out. Everyone was gone. You can kind of just tell like everybody wanted to give Zhang his props, but it was just hard to give him his props because of the shock we were in. We were all just so focused on Joyce and saying like, I think the instant question on social media, normally when you see a man win a fight like that, instantly it's who does he fight next now that he's won? But this time it was where does Joyce go? Because we all kind of said it's a long road back for the loser, but I think everyone kind of expected Zhang to lose this time. Um, Whereas with Joyce losing, it's obviously it is a long road back no matter who lost, but I think there's a lot more people concerned about the road back, and you're hearing people say retirement, you're hearing people say you should go fight this guy, that guy, this guy. Um, I just hope Frank Warren keeps trusting him. Though I know I'm going on a massive tangent now, but I'm guessing you've seen Frank Warren's post-fight thoughts where he's saying, "Oh, Joyce may well retire." Um, I don't really think. Obviously, I know Frank's got to do his job, and obviously Zhang is a Queensbury fighter. Um, Obviously Frank's going to be thinking of where can he make the most money. It's not like he's a new promoter where it's not like Eddie Hearn and AJ where Eddie's first major signing was AJ. Frank's been in this game for years. He's had fighters come and go. He's had fighters probably make more money than Joyce and make the company more money lose. But I didn't like the way he was talking. I've got a feeling that we may well see Joyce get left out in the cold after this. I hope they don't. Um, Personally, I don't think he should retire. I think there's still interesting fights to be made. Obviously, if he wants to win a world title, it's a very long road back. But if S Jam and Joyce want to just go in for fun fights, I think there's a lot there to be made. My one special request to them is just please don't turn Joe Joyce into a Derek Chisora now as a massive gatekeeper. I still think Joyce has because people talk about punch resistance. I know I'm still going on now, but that's the whole point of this. They talk about punch resistance. Um, yes, we've seen him get tagged up, but when you think about it, it's only one man that's put him in a position like that. Obviously, I know this could be accumulation of all the punches that he's taken over his career. You got to think Carlos Takam hit him with fucking everything under the sun. Christian Hamer hit him with everything under the sun. Joseph Parker hit him with everything under the sun. And he didn't seem to be affected by that. Obviously, facing Zhang was like the first time he's been in a real 50-50 where the guy's bigger than him. Joyce was usually the bigger man. So I know as an amateur he's going to face people bigger than him, but the pro game's much different from the amateur game. It's easy to see the differences. Um, I still feel like there's something out there for Joyce. I don't know who they could put him in there with. There's the Dubois rematch. I put it down in my college work earlier. So I went on Twitter and said, can anyone just ping off some ideas of where they put Joyce? And I've had this one. I had Dillian White if he gets cleared. I think, don't get me wrong, I think it'd be a really boring fight if no one lands a shot because it's two guys who are quite slow. And that's no disrespect, but they are. They're not the sharpest and fastest of punchers. They are more sluggers, if anything. Um, Jared Anderson, it depends. It depends what route they send him down now. Do they use him as a feeder for the young up and coming fighters, or do Queensberry try and push him back into that top bit? Because there's still money to be made with him. I think get him. I'd say if they start him off with the Dubois rematch, but then again it's Queensberry. I think when you look at it again, do you want to risk putting Dubois in there with Joyce? Because while Joyce is coming off 2 defeats now, Zhang would beat a lot of heavyweights, in my opinion. I think after Saturday, I think Zhang really proved you got to think Zhang, while he's not undefeated, that Hergovich fight he won. There's no joke about it. He won that fight. Obviously, he's got that draw with Jerry Forrest. Again, that baffles me. How can you drop a man 3 times and still draw? I'm not the boxer, so I'm not going to go into that. But I think if Queensberry want to get Joyce back to the top, start off with a Dubois rematch. But I think there's a lot more to be done with Dubois than there is with Joyce. Joyce is 38, Dubois is 25. Are Queensberry going to want to take that risk with someone that could be one of the biggest heavyweights in the world eventually? You got to think all these heavyweights at the top at the moment are mid to late 30s. Dubois is 25. When these all come and go, it'll be Dubois' time to take over. So I don't think they'll put him in there. I don't think they'll put Joyce in there. They don't want to face that risk yet. They're going to want to build up Dubois properly now. Obviously, I said the Dillian White fight. Jared Anderson, I feel like that'd be a feeder fight, and I feel like that's a fight where if Queensberry leave Joyce out in the cold, I feel like Top Rank would snap him up and try and put him in there with someone like Jared Anderson. I'm sure I had some other fights listed down as well. There's people messing me with a couple of fights as well. Jermaine Franklin, maybe. Would that be a decent fighter to put with Joe Joyce? But yeah, I feel like I've kind of just gone completely away from the question of what was it like in the arena. I've given you the past rundown and I've given you my present and the future. I've basically given you a whole timeline of what to do with Joe Joyce. But back to the question. The arena it was just quite quiet when Joyce went down. Everyone was shocked. Obviously, you had your 50 people supporting Zhang, making themselves known, louder than ever. And fair play to them. Zhang came in with the right game plan, didn't he? And I think that's one of the knockouts of the year, by the way. I think that could be up there as one of the knockouts of the year. I'm going to stop rambling on now and throw the ball back over to you. What did you make of Zhang Joyce 2?
I think again we're British boxing fans. We're a British boxing platform podcast. So of course our initial focus is always going to go towards Joe Joyce. But we said this about Liam Smith and Chris Eubank, that the inquiry always goes into the what went wrong rather than giving the flowers to the victor. And in this case, Zhang Zhang deserves all the plaudits out there. It was a brilliant knockout, as you say. I think all things considered, it's got to be up there for knockout of the year when you consider the punch, who it was against, the way it was administered, the fact that Joyce has not been put down in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, certainly a contender for knockout of the year, and all the respects in the world to Zhang. He's going to put himself in line for a big fight. I'm happy that he's signed to Queensberry because I think that's going to open up a lot of doors for him, and rightly so. He's 40 himself, so he needs to get a move on. And if he's the WBO interim world champion, he's going to have another fight before he can even think about getting anywhere near Usyk or whoever may hold the unified world titles by the time the WBO mandatory is called, which will probably be due in about a year's time. With Joe Joyce at 38, I think, firstly touching on the Frank Warren comments, I think he tried clarifying them in an IFL interview, that he'd be there to support him. But in the moment, it did feel like he was disregarding them, that it was a spent force. And I can kind of agree with him if you like that. Boxing's a brutal sport. We only know that from the outside looking in. For us as boxing fans and wannabe boxing journalists, that we know boxing's a brutal sport. And was it Don King or Bob Arum or somebody back in the day that said, I'll come in with a champ and I'll leave with a champ. We know it's a brutal business, and we'd like to think that there's loyalty and whatnot. Hopefully Frank does show that to Joe, because I think he deserves it. In terms of actually retiring for Joe, this is where I do agree with Frank that if that confidence has gone, if that he feels the juggernaut persona has been smashed to pieces, he's not got a lot of time to rebuild. So if he goes back in and does a couple of sparring sessions, he's going to take some time off, of course. If he feels like it's not there, if it's not right, then by all means call it a day. On the flip side, he's 38. He's had 17 fights, headlined 2 or 3 times. Again, I don't know what Joe Joyce gets paid per fight, but I don't know if he's going to be comfortable. I don't know if he needs to take a couple more fights. And the rebuild for Joe Joyce is he's going to have to take a risky fight, and he's one knockout away from being forced into retirement. He's not got the time to start. I think you can give him one give me, as a comeback maybe in January or something like that. But after that, it's straight into being an opponent with the likes of a Jared Anderson, a Jalolov, a Daniel Dubois. I think the Daniel Dubois Joe Joyce fight is an epic rematch now for the reasons we never expected, because when they first fought, we thought, all right, maybe we'll rematch when one of them gets a world title. Now we're at a point where the loser retires of that fight. But I think Joe Joyce moving forward is going to be such a different fighter. It could make him more dangerous. It could make him more vulnerable. The worry is that he's one stoppage away from being forced into retirement, because if he gets in there with a Jared Anderson or Jalolov, Frank Sanchez, these up and coming heavyweights that are wanting to break through into the top 10, it's a very precarious position for him to be placed in. So it was sad to see. Would he retire? Would he look at moving into he's a very engaging character, but he's not a David Haye, he's not a self-promoter, he's not a Tony Bellew. Would you really see Joe Joyce getting involved in media? I'm not too sure if that's an avenue he'd want to go down if he retired. So it'd be interesting to see what he'd want to do. He said he's going to fight on. Is that, again, going back to, is it a necessity that he needs to fight on because he needs to get a couple more zeros in the bank account? But you get a couple more zeros in the bank account, if you're not going to be around to spend the money, then it's futile. So I like the idea of a Dillian White fight, but again, that's similar to the Joyce fight. It's a loser retires, because if you have consecutive losses of that manner, it's a difficult one to come back from. But yeah, we wish Joe the very best moving forward. We look forward to a big fight for Zhilei Zhang, because he deserves it. Me personally, I'd love to see Zhilei Zhang anti-Joshua out in the Bird's Nest in Beijing. What an event that would be. You could tell it on the Olympic story, the Olympic background, that anti-Joshua's got the win over him. I don't know if anti-Joshua really would want to take that fight. I know Eddie Hearn will come out and say why not, but of course he's going to say why not. He's not going to refuse a fight for anti-Joshua. I know they're all eyes on Deontay Wilder, but I think Zhilei Zhang is a good fight for anti-Joshua. I think it's a winnable fight for anti-Joshua. And out in China, it'd be a massive, massive event. Yeah, so away from the main events and the dramatics that came along with it, Josh, there was an undercard, of course, with Queensbury, some of their top prospects getting victories, the likes of Royston Barney Smith, Tommy Fletcher, Sean Noakes, Ezra Taylor, who I know you're very fond of. But there's a couple of fights in particular that I want to pick out. Firstly, the young heavyweight Moises Atalma. He was a massive signing when he linked up with Queensbury. Very highly touted, turned over 18. He was sparring. The sparring stories with the likes of Joe Joyce and Daniel Dubois. He was going to the gyms in his skill uniform. He set this lofty ambition, this goal of being the youngest heavyweight world champion in history, and he wanted to beat Mike Tyson to that record. I think that's an ambition that he's going to have to shelve for now. I'm not saying that he won't get to world titles, but slow and steady. He went the distance a couple of times, and then Saturday he got back to winning by knockout, and it was a great stoppage, and the kind of stoppage that'll go viral and get the name Moses Atama back on the lips of boxing fans across the country. So yeah, let's start with Moses Atama. Very impressive.
He was very good, wasn't he? I said this to Dev Sani last week. We've never seen Moses smile after a fight. Obviously, the first fight, understandable. His brother Carol had just lost his first title fight. Second fight, frustrated, wanted to get some rounds in, but still knocked the guy out. And ended up just blasting another guy out inside 30 seconds. I think after two fights, he had a combined fight time of about 40 odd seconds, and that's including the 10 counts that the rest went up to. Third fight, finally got the rounds in, but went the distance, so wasn't happy because there's this massive pressure on him that he needs to perform and that he needs to knock people out. So obviously not happy with himself there. Fourth fight, went distance again in Telford. I was there for that one. Frustrating again because Espindola didn't come to fight. Espindola came to survive, but that's the journeyman game. And then finally he got back to winning ways. Got a solid minute under his belt at least this time. But then landed a crisp uppercut that sat his opponent down. He got up and you just saw the hand speed. And for a heavyweight, the hand speed is very good. And I think he is the next best thing. I think he'll be the face of the heavyweight division once all these guys come and go. And the fact he's only a year older than me baffles me. He's born December 2004. You know, he's still 18 now. Well, he's 5-0. I wouldn't be surprised if they stick him on a card sometime soon. Obviously, I'm sure Queensbury have got a couple shows lined up to end the year. They might chuck him on that massive card they've got set for Manchester. I doubt it because that card's already very, very good. I'm sure Queensbury will get him out again, maybe even two more times this year, especially after that round one knockout at the end of the weekend. But yeah, like many fans, I was very impressed. And I think he'll be the face of the heavyweight division one day.
A couple of other names that I wanted to talk about, Josh. They made their comeback fights. Anti-Yard, Zach Parker, very much at the opposite end of their careers to Moses Atama. They're up there at the world level, the world scene. Both coming back from defeats last time out. Anti-Yard stopped by one of the pound for pound very best in Artur Beterbiev when he challenged for the unified lightweight world titles. And Zach Parker coming off a heartbreaking loss to John Ryder. Not the fact that he lost to John Ryder, the fact that he lost through injury. It's never a way a fighter wants to go out. Firstly, with Zach Parker, fighting at super middleweight, of course. He was on that 5-fight knockout stoppage streak before the John Ryder fight, and we thought, this is where we see the real Zach Parker. There's a lot of hype behind him. Neil Marsh's manager, one of the best guys in British boxing, really looks out for his fighters. Has a small stable, but he really knows how to maneuver these guys, along with David Avanissian, amongst others. And it was totally derailed, and it was a really bad injury. You could see the scars and the marks on the hand of Zach Parker where he's been under the surgeon's knife. There was talk that he might not have fought again. So with both Yard and Zach Parker, it weren't their opponents that got me excited. It was seeing them back in the ring and what might be next. And starting again, like I say, with Zach Parker, I think it was interesting that straight after his fight, he called Anti-Yard out, and no one's really picked up on this. Frank Warren kind of dismissed it and kind of suggested that they're on different career paths. But if Zach Parker wanted to move up to a stacked light heavyweight division domestically and on the world scene, that'd be an interesting move. And Anti-Yard does what he does: methodical, brutal, savage, gets a knockout. Good to see him back, and excited to see what these guys could move on to next.
I'll start off with Zach Parker. I was glad to see him back. Obviously, I know he's from the other side of the East Midlands in Derby, but I was happy to see him back. You could see how happy he was to be back in there. I spoke to him at the end of July, first time at Davies, Cunningham. And that was his first time since the John Ryder defeat of him getting out to boxing. He hadn't done any media. He hadn't been to any boxing event since that night. And I said to him, we spoke about fight dates, but I didn't expect it to come as soon as September 23rd. Also, I spoke to him again on Thursday of fight week, and again, he was kind of just very straight to the point in the interview. You kind of just tell that he wasn't asked about the media stuff. He just wanted to fight. He wanted to get back in that ring. Obviously, it was no opponent that was going to it wasn't like he was going to steal the show. But again, I don't think he cared about it. I think he just wanted to get back to winning ways. get some rounds under his belt, which is exactly what he did. He got some rounds under his belt and he got the stoppage. So yeah, just good to see him back. I like the idea of him going to light heavy. I think a fight that is obviously I know they've touted the Lerone Richards fight at super middle, but Lerone Richards is seemingly wanting to step up as well to light heavy. What if we see Parker versus Richards, but at light heavy for the European? Obviously, I think Lerone Richards is chasing that European at 175. What if Zach Parker follows him there as well and tries to get him? I know Zach Parker's going to want the Anthony Yard fight. Anthony Yard seems to have his eye set on Waxy Aziz. If Frank Warren doesn't have his eye on it, then I don't know if we'll see it or not. I'd like to see it personally. I think it's a fight that nobody had thought about until the comments were made. It's a good fight. It's a good domestic fight. I'm sure it does decent numbers. Two people, obviously Zach Parker's got that football fan base behind him, being quite close to his football club. Obviously, he was set to headline at the Derby Stadium. So he's
Twice,
obviously got that
twice
back
it
in.
was
And
Vanguard, wasn't it? It fell apart against
yeah,
Vanguard, and that fell apart twice, which was devastating because that was when he was really knocking on the door, and we thought, this could be the next best thing in a super middleweight division where we've had Callum Smith reign as world champion, and we had Billy Joe Saunders reign as world champion. It's quite a glamorous division, and that did seem at the time to be Zach Parker's coming out party, and it's the fact that he would have had it at his hometown football stadium. It was just stuff of dreams, and for it not to have happened was heartbreaking.
well, Sam, they obviously originally had it set for May 21st at Pride Park. I was going to go to it because it is around the corner, but my mum said no because it was my GCSEs, so I wasn't able to. But then they actually had it. Obviously, international boxing news, obviously they leak everything. And I remember because I saw it on my phone and they hadn't deleted it. But they actually they were originally set to reschedule it for November 5th last year in Nottingham, which would have been perfect. I mean, I hadn't started any of the media stuff yet, what I do now, but it still would have been nice. I'm never going to complain when boxing's in Nottingham. But no, they just never did. They just seemed to go with John Ryder instead. Good move. Well, what seemed to be a good move ended up not being a good move. But yeah, it wasn't like it was Ryder being superb. It was a hand injury that stopped it ultimately. As for Anthony Yard, though, I think he's not going to be fussed by Zach Parker's statements. I feel like we might end up seeing Zach Parker back at 168. So it's one of those ones. We've got to see what happens. Anthony Yard, I feel like it is right to push for the Boatsy Aziz winner. Callum Smith's obviously tied up with Beterbiev. Bivol could be fighting Lyndon Arthur of all people. That'd be quite interesting. Yeah, no, I think the logical move is just to sit and wait for the Boatsy Aziz winner, although that is a WBA eliminator. So while he can eye up the winner, does the winner then go face Bivol instead? I don't know, but that's boxing for you. So many sanctioning bodies that sometimes what you want you just can't get because of the 5 belts, and in the WBC's case, the 40 belts leading off from that one belt. So. But I think I think it was a good undercard on the whole though from Saturday night.
Yeah, I think just touching finally on Anthony Yard, I think hopefully they've learned from the previous mistakes, and we mentioned this on last week's podcast that he yo-yos from the very top echelons of the division, taking on the unified champions and the long reigning champions like he did with Kovalev and Beterbiev, but then drops down multiple levels. Has a couple of knockover fights, so all due respect to his opponent, and then jumps back up to the world team. There's only really the Lyndon Arthur fights where he's kind of progressively built into the bigger fight. So hopefully this time, if he does aim for the Boatsy Aziz, I think that's a great move for his career and for him to build up that experience to go and challenge for a world title again. Because I think, if the stars align, Anthony Yard is more than capable of winning a world title. He's shown that in the fight with Beterbiev, that even though he lost, he was competitive as anyone has been against Beterbiev. So I definitely think there's a world title out there if the timing's right for Anthony Yard. So yeah, let's hope that he takes the logical steps in what to do next. Josh, let's move forward. Let's fast forward in the early hours UK time, in the hours after Joyce Zhang. Some of us stayed up, some of us were already awake, some of us set alarms. And there was a card headlined by Richardson Hitchens against Jose Zepeda. We had Sandy Ryan going for the unified world titles against Jessica McCaskill. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of last week, we only had it as rumours on last week's podcast. In the middle of last week, in the hours and the days after we put our video out, our podcast out, it was confirmed that Conor Benn was going to make his return after 18 months away from the ring. And all of a sudden, this card blew up. The eyeballs of the boxing world were focused on Orlando, Florida. Conor Benn cleared to fight. And there's such a play on word, whether you're Eddie Hearn, whether you're Robert Smith at the British Boxing Board of Control, whether you're for Conor Benn, against Conor Benn, there's such a play on words with how you want to word this. But he made his ring return against Orozco, I want to say his name correctly. Tough Mexican. Conor Benn went in, got 10 rounds under his belt, made his ring return after 18 months, fighting at 154 against a much bigger man. Someone that we'd not really heard of before. He had a respectable record, never been stopped. And he goes the distance with Conor Benn, who threw the kitchen sink at him. But I think the biggest story lies around the fact that it was actually Conor Benn back in the ring. So I think firstly we'll touch on the Sandy Ryan decision, which was an absolute joke. She was robbed of a unified world title victory against Jessica McCaskill. All due respect to McCaskill, she's been a great champion. She's got some good victories under her belt, but she didn't deserve anything out of that fight against Sandy Ryan. I think the one card that did go for Sandy Ryan had a winning by 2 rounds, which in of itself was a joke. Never mind giving it level or to McCaskill. So, Josh, firstly, your thoughts on that fight?
I mean, I know the scorecards off by heart. That's how traumatic it was. Again, Sandy Ryan from round the corner, from the other side of the East Midlands. So while I might not like the Derby lot, I always want to see him do well, especially when it's all the way across the other side of the world in the States. 95-95, can't see it. 96-94, Sandy Ryan. So they're only giving it by what? 1 round, 2 rounds, is it? Yeah. Either way, rounds. Can't see it, if I'm being honest. And then 97-93 to McCaskill. Like, playfully, what the fuck are you watching? Like, were you watching a 10-rounder from the other week? Were you watching what were you watching? Like, how can you sit there and watch that fight and say McCaskill done well? Like, don't get me wrong, she's done well. Like, especially some people, I can't remember who it was who said it, but I think it was Clifton Mitchell. I was watching a Clifton Mitchell interview in Boxing King Media on the way to London, and he said, with all due respect, she's achieved a lot more than what she should have, which is quite an interesting comment. But just she didn't deserve to come away with her titles after the fight. Sandy Ryan should be coming back to the UK, coming back to Derby, with those world titles, with every single one. And instead she's come back with. It's like it reminds you of the Maxi Hughes situation. You've been robbed of glory.
Great
You
comparison.
know, a couple tweets, or not even a couple, a lot of tweets saying you've done well and that you should have won. While it's nice, does it pay your bills? Does it get you those great world? Like, I know it's different situations because Sandy Ryan can be a lot more marketable than Maxi Hughes. Obviously, women's boxing, the landscape of women's boxing is a lot different to the landscape of male boxing. That's fact. Um, but like Maxi Hughes, while he got flooded with tweets saying how well he did and that you should have won the fight, that's not going to pay your bills. That's not going to get you those next shots, especially someone in that position. But again, with Sandy Ryan, like, I know they're going to look to make the rematch, and it's a lot different because Maxi Hughes isn't getting offered that rematch, and he just seemingly won't get it. But like, still, it's she should be coming home with those belts. Like, whether money's a factor for her or not, like, it is her job. This is how she provides for herself and for people around her. And yeah, it's sometimes it's a lot more than just the world titles. It takes away opportunities for the future. You got to think Clifton Mitchell, Matchroom, Sandy herself. They're going to want to go for the best of the best. Obviously, I know fighting McCaskill was ultimately that, but realistically, she should now be sat here eyeing up, go into a different weight class and targeting someone like Chantel Cameron or something like that. And instead, she's now got to sit there and try and make a rematch against McCaskill, which I'm hoping that they're going to try land in the UK. We'll probably see it sometime next year. I don't see it happening before the end of the year with Matchroom's schedule. They're going to have all their shows planned out. We're not going to get it before the end of the year. But yeah, just an awful, awful decision. And literally, it's literally what I spoke to. I know, so I keep finding a way to get Zhang Joyce back involved with everything. But I spoke to Sean George, Zhang's coach. There's a comment he made in the press conference saying he doesn't trust UK judges. I had an interview and I followed up on those comments because I thought they were quite interesting. And he said he knows it's not just the UK and that it happens around the world. And that was exactly what happened on Saturday night. We got another display from supposedly the ones with the best eyes in boxing who know how to score fights. What the fuck do they watch? How have they even got themselves into a position? It baffles me. You know, when you see the whole boxing world in agreement of Sandy Ryan has won this fight with the closest scorecard, bear in mind, being 98-92 on everyone's lips. Everyone was saying 98-92 is the closest you can give. BoxRec had it 100-90 on Sunday afternoon. I think it's now 99-91. That's what the fan scorecard is. How can you see something so differently? What makes you so? What's different about your eyes to mine? We've all got functioning eyes. Like all the judges have functioning eyes. What are they watching? Because it's getting to a point now where it's like there's close fights and like close fights aren't robberies, but that fight wasn't close. That is a robbery, and I can't get my words out on how confusing it is because we're seeing the same. Me and you will sit there and we'll see the exact same thing. Just there's one difference. We see it through a screen. They see it in person. It's not even like they can say we've got an obstructive view. You're sat next to the ring. You've got a couple ropes in your way, but that's not going to stop how you see a fight going. Like, oh, I missed that fucking right hook that landed that one of the round. No, you didn't. It baffles me. I'm going to stop rambling on because I'm sure I had the same ramble when Maxie Hughes got robbed. But shit judging just does my head, and I'm sure it does everyone else's head in. So I just want to see it gone.
And I think you hit the nail on the head that in the days immediately following the fight that there's going to be uproar on social media and we all share our opinions, but ultimately nothing changes and we don't really know where we're going to get to a point when it does change and something is done about this and judges are held accountable and they're made to explain their decisions, for the integrity of the sport. It never seems to be done in a public manner. Maybe that needs to start happening, that we need these explanations because otherwise it's tomorrow's chip paper. It doesn't become anything. As I said in the build up into this review, that all eyeballs were firmly fixed on Conor Benn, the return to the ring. Josh, I'm going to be completely honest. We're going to have to look at this as a sporting contest, what the 10-round fight was, and the situation surrounding the fight. And I'm as big a fan of Conor Benn as I am any boxer. I love watching him. I think his tenacity, his ferocity is a joy to behold. And you see him in full flow when he's knocking these people out. You can pick holes in his resume, but this is a guy that's coming into boxing with no amateur background, and I think he was being moved at the right pace into the right fights. But the fact that he was back in the ring after 18 months, the fact that he was out in Florida, we've seen that he's been cleared, but we're still yet to receive any actual reasoning for these two failed drug tests. These people saying that he's been cleared on jurisdiction, and that's why UKAD and the British Boxing Board of Control are planning on appealing the decision. I just think that there needs to be a lot more clarity around the situation, because what if he goes into this appeal with the British Boxing Board of Control and then he loses the appeal and he's banned? What if he knocked out Orozco and he becomes seriously injured? There's a lot of murky waters in boxing, and it can stink at times. And I do wish Conor Benn the best, and I do hope that he's found innocent. I want to believe that he's innocent, and ultimately, I think I do believe that he's innocent. I just want to see the reasoning, the proof for these failed drug tests. This 270-page document that we've almost has built into a myth now, that it's almost become infamous in its own right, that we've not yet seen. The WBC apparently have seen it. I think eventually it made its way to the hands of the British Boxing Board of Control. It's just a bit smelly, and it's just a bit sticky. It's a bit, is this morally right? Can we, as boxing fans, talk about morality when, the super middleweight champion of the world, Canelo, who's in action this weekend, he's failed the drug test. The generally considered number one heavyweight boxer on the planet, Tyson Fury, he's failed the drug test. So. Speaking of morals in boxing's often a murky walk in itself. So I guess my question to you, Josh, is what was your thoughts on not on the fight, but on the fact that Conor Benn had made his ring return with all this still seemingly going on?
Initially, I was just happy. I put it on Instagram, put it on my personal Instagram. I said, regardless of your opinion, he's been cleared to fight. But then I sat back and I really thought it, and while I am happy to see him back, morally was it the right thing? So I think the one thing was on people's minds is, you've hit the nail on the head there. If he did knock out his opponent, Orozco, or his name is, if he knocked him out, it wouldn't have done himself any favors. I think him going the distance I think it might have low key done him a bit of a favor. Then the other, there's two ways to look at it. If he knocked him out, it will be, oh, he's still juicing up. He's still under this. He's still under that. This is just all corrupt. But with him not knocking him out, all the comments I was seeing on Twitter was just, oh, that's because he's not got his juice power anymore. Is
Seen that, seen that.
I think what people forget is that he was fighting a weight class. He was fighting in a weight class he hasn't fought before. He was fighting a guy much bigger than him. While this guy did start his career at light flyweight, which baffles me, by the way,
Nuts.
baffles me. I mean, how would because on the DAZN graphic said he was 24, but apparently he's 32.
All right,
I'm
okay. Interesting. Should
I'm,
we?
I'm, I'm
Let's
gonna
go.
I'm gonna get it up now. So
Those
I'll
reps.
keep talking, but I want to say he's 32 because there's no way in 8 years you can go from light flyweight straight up to that.
So
Um,
Box Rec has him down as 24,
24.
and he
When did
made
he make his debut? 2015.
2015, so he would have been 16. Obviously, Mexicans, they turn over
Yeah.
young.
So
Um,
it's
yeah,
fair.
107 and a half pounds he weighed on his, sorry, 107 and three quarter pounds he weighed back in 2015. And now he weighed in against Conor Benn. And he was huge when he weighed in at
He
100.
looked massive. He looked massive. I'm going on Google to get this because someone said to me that he's 32, but I don't think if
Yeah,
BoxRec
has
is
him down
24,
as 24. Um, but yeah, again, we're going down on a tangent there. That he was teaked off. And as you say there, the critics that did come out on Twitter, and there was many of them, was flipping the script and saying, this is kind of been without, these drug test failures, without these banned substances that he's been accused of taking, not taking effect. Ultimately, he did get in the ring. He done a job. In parts, looked like the kind of Ben we know. Very aggressive, a pressure fighter. As I say, he's very, very entertaining. He's brilliant to watch. He gets the win. I think the next fight on his hands. And as much as Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn come in for a lot of criticism about this whole situation, they're the guys that are getting asked the questions. And Eddie Hearn answers more questions than all the other promoters put together. And this is not me brown nosing. It is what it is. Eddie Hearn is the lead promoter when it comes to self promoting, when it comes to answering the questions that others won't answer, be it a round VADA test and whatever it is, he tends to answer the questions, sometimes to his own detriment. They do come out and they've spoke about it, they're defending themselves, they're coming for a lot of criticism. But then also, we've got to kind of point the finger at the British Boxing Board of Control. They're the governing body, they're the guys that are in charge here. And we're still sat here on the 27th of September. This appeal, this situation, the whole scenario has been going on for 18 months, and we're yet to even have a date to say when this appeal is going to take place.
didn't the news break to the public about a year ago? I think it was. I think next week when it's Wood Warrington fight week will be a year on since it was meant to be Eubank Penn fight week.
There's thousands of fights that take place in a year, in Britain alone. But something this high profile, you've seen the likes of Kamil Sokolowski failed a drug test recently, and he's been banned. And Amir Khan was banned after his fight with Kell Brook, and conveniently both those guys were retired. Was it easier for the British Boxing Board of Control to deal with them because it was high profile? Is that what we're saying? But either way, someone needs to be held accountable. This needs to be boxed off, done, finished, appeal. Ban him if he fails his appeal. Let him continue with his career if he doesn't fail the appeal. But these fights that are taking place in the meantime, in the stopgap, just doesn't feel right to me. And that's not a criticism, Conor Benn or Eddie Hearn. It's a criticism of the situation that this needs to be dealt with by the people in control, the powers that be.
I think realistically, no matter what Conor Benn, Matchroom, anyone around Conor Benn, no matter what they do until we get an answer from the board, I don't think they're going to win. They're never going to be able to win the public's hearts because if he
Oh, it's
goes
never
in
going to
there,
go away. It's never going to go away, even if he does win the appeal. This
yeah,
is
exactly. The thing, like, and that's it, especially if he is found innocent, like people on Twitter are still never going to believe him. People are going to say because if he's found guilty, oh, so he was right the whole time and chatting shit for the last year. If he is found innocent, oh, well, why has he spent so like he talks about how much money he's mentioned how much money he spent. It's like oh, he's just paying it to cover it all. Because I like Conor Benn a lot. Like I've not been someone who spent my whole life watching boxing. I only got into boxing about about 4 years ago. I was about 13. So I've not come through enough. I'm not going to sit here and say I fucking watched Mike Tyson or Anthony Crolla or even ones like that. Like Conor Benn was one of the first fighters I kind of watched. So it was around the time he made his debut, around the same time I first got into the sport. And I liked him the whole time. You know, even at those periods where he was just labelled a hype job and someone that it's kind of like Campbell Hatton now. That's why I know this is a bit of a different tangent, but you know these boxers who come into the game because of their dad, and their dad was a famous world champion who did this, that, the other. Um, and these boxers kind of just get slung into the deep end straight away. You know, like Campbell Hatton when he turned over, he had all the eyes on him. You know, I remember that night at Tottenham when he had that sixth round in which a lot of people said he lost. Never seen someone face so much stick. Obviously, apart from the Conor Benn situation, he's faced fucking loads of stick. And this is another point. Going back to the topic, you know, it's a shit situation. We're getting Eddie Hearn's probably getting more questions now than what he was last year, because the thing is, listen, the questions rose and rose and rose and rose, dipped off a little bit, and then as soon as his fight got announced, straight back up again. And now Conor Benn's the biggest talking point in the UK again, and it's for the complete wrong reasons. Again, that's nothing disrespectful towards Conor Benn or Matchroom. It's straight facts. Go on social media. And I know Eddie Hearn was saying Conor Benn being on this card brings a lot of eyes to it. But I want to see. I said this on Saturday to someone at the Zhang Joyce card. Can someone get me a graph of the viewing numbers from the Conor Benn fight to the Richardson Hitchens fight? And I can tell you now, it's common facts. We can see, and say again, this is no disrespect to Richardson Hitchens, anyone at Matchroom. It's people do not care about Richardson Hitchens when Conor Benn, someone who's been under stick in the British public for months, not even months, nearly a whole year now. He's been mentioned in every single interview. You do an interview with Eddie Hearn, Conor Benn's name's getting mentioned. I'll put my house on it. When I go to Charlo Opetai versus Jordan Thompson presser tomorrow, everyone will ask him about Eddie Hearn. Everyone will ask Eddie Hearn about Conor Benn because that's fact. And I feel like it was a bit. A lot of people saying it's shady that they announced it so last minute, but the reports were out there for weeks. Eddie Hearn had been saying for what, the best part of a month, just over a month even. I think he was saying it at the beginning of August. I think when they even first, like just after they announced the September 23rd show, they said that Conor Benn could feature on this show. You know, it's not been hidden to the public that he was going to be making his return. But I think that was more opponent issues or anything. Um, we said it last week that there was rumors floating about, and those rumors have been circulating for ages beforehand. But obviously, we don't talk about news that's coming up in a month. We talk about what happened last week and what happened this week. So we're not going to go into the details of when the rumors first circulated. But I remember seeing these rumors months back, not months back, but AJ fight week. You know, that's when we started to see some rumors circulate. Conor Benn could be on this date. I remember it was between Conor Benn and Callum Smith to fight on the Florida card because obviously they want to keep Callum Smith active if he's got the I was meant to fight better be over in August, but that's been pushed to January now. Yeah, back to the topic. Again, I'm like you, it doesn't sit right with me. And that is nothing disrespectful or me giving shit to Conor Benn, Eddie Hearn, anyone affiliated with Conor Benn. But it's just we've not been shown I know we don't need to see every single bit of evidence, but just a statement from the board just to say what's going on, even if the appeal's not done yet. And also Eddie Hearn's mentioned that they want to speed up the appeal, and Conor Benn said they want to speed up the appeal, but we're not getting any answers. And this situation has been going on for a year now, off cameras and behind the media. It's been going on for well over a year now. And I almost feel like we're sat in the exact same place we were when it first happened. So I don't know. I want an answer to be found because I don't want to see Conor Benn going to a Chris Eubank fight that Eddie Hearn's touted at times could land in Saudi. I think if they take that fight to Saudi, by the way, I think we'll see a massive uproar. I think we'll see a fucking huge uproar if they go to Saudi. I'm going to stop waffling on now. I'm going to throw the ball back to you and move us into whatever's next.
Yeah, so to close off, Josh, as we always do, we have to get our predictions in. I think I was wrong last week with my Joe Joyce prediction. Did you go Zhang? Did you stick with Zhang? I know you was.
No, originally I was in two minds. Then after listening to you, I went Joyce late stoppage, and it was just
There's a couple of world title fights, big world title fights, for us to look forward to this weekend to close out the show. Firstly, here in the UK, Jordan Thompson, he goes for the IBF Cruiserweight World title and the Ring Magazine title as well. He takes on Charlo Opetai, who exploded onto the World Cruiserweight scene when he beat the consensus number one in division, Matthias Bradis. That goes down this weekend in London. Big step up for Jordan Thompson. I think, to go from a Luke Watkins fight into a fight with the number one in the division in Jai Opetai is a huge step up, but this is an opportunity that he couldn't knock. The fight was originally going to be Jai Opetai against Richard Riakpo, and then they offered it to Masternak. Both of those guys, for whatever reason, didn't take the fight. Jordan Thompson gets the call, takes the fight. He's training with Tony Sims now. He's based himself down in London, made that big move. It's a big ask. Jai Opetai looked fantastic against Bradis, and he could see this as his coming of age fight in the fact that he's kind of linked with Matchroom now. There's other big fights out there in the cruiserweight division. Could he underestimate Jordan Thompson? I don't think he's going to know too much about him. We know Jordan Thompson, big, athletic, strong. I think this makes for a great fight, and I'm prepared to be called out again if I get this wrong. But I'm backing the underdog here. I'm backing the Brit. Jordan Thompson is a mank at heart. Jordan Thompson will come through some scary patches in this fight. And I'm going to go big. I'm going to go brave. Jordan Thompson stops Jai Opetai in between rounds 9 and 12.
See, you took a page out of my book. Normally, I always back the underdog. And I was hoping you were going to throw the ball first. Like, you're going to give me the shot to go first, because normally I always go first. I want to back Jordan Thompson. Obviously, I know it's a massive ask, but like you, I want to back the Brit. Even for you, it's a lot closer to home. You're from the same city. But I want to back the Brit. I like Jordan Thompson. I remember the first time I properly watched him in action was December 18th on the Parker Chisora 2 undercard. I remember he was on the before the bell section and stopped his guy inside a minute. I'm going to back a Jordan Thompson stoppage. Rounds wise, see, I don't want to just go the same as you because that's boring. But then do I just go and just say a Jai Opetai win just so we've got that 50-50 split and then one of us gets the bragging rights next week? No, I'm gonna stick with the Brit. I'd rather have a Brit win than just have bragging rights over you for an episode. I'm gonna go Jordan Thompson. I'm gonna say round 5, he's gonna just chin him with a right uppercut, and Opetai is gonna go down, just won't be able to find his way back to his feet. Done.
Big call. That fight, of course, headlines the Matchroom card live on DAZN, guys. Check that out. There's Ellis Scotty defending her world title on that card as well. Rhiannon Dixon goes for the European title. She won the Commonwealth belt last time out. Plenty of Matchroom prospects on the card, so make sure you check that out. Josh, Canelo Alvarez against Jermell Charlo. The undisputed super middleweight world titles are on the line. Las Vegas, Canelo fight week. It's huge. Still the number one draw in world boxing for me. He defends his world titles against another undisputed world champion, Jermell Charlo, stepping up from 154 pounds to 168. It's a great fight on paper. There's so many intangibles about this fight. Jermell Charlo, he's had the loss on his record to Tony Harrison. He avenged that. He drew with Brian Castano. He avenged that. A lot to like about Jermell Charlo, but one thing about him that's not admirable, same as his brother Jermall Charlo, the WBC middleweight world champion, is the inactivity for whatever reason, in the ring issues, out the ring issues. We can't go too much into people's personal lives, but inactivity is the number one killer of boxing careers. And he's coming into this fight with Canelo off a huge layoff. I can't remember when his last fight was. Let me give it a check. Yeah, he last fought in May of 2022. So we're looking at 15, 16-month layoff. I think that could play a part here. Canelo Alvarez has been one of the most active boxers, although not as active now as he was in the 2019-2020 period when he won the super middleweight world titles. And I think that'll show on the night. I think Canelo, you could argue, was on the decline just because of how good he was at his very best when he was knocking out Billy Joe Saunders and he was demolishing Callum Smith and others. He stopped Caleb Plant, of course, to become undisputed. I still think, even on a slight decline, he's still one of the very best boxers on the planet. And I think the size, the natural, even though Canelo come up through the weights, that naturally he's a bigger man than Jermell Charlo in terms of thicker set. Jermell might be taller, but I think Canelo will carry the weight much better. I think it'll be entertaining. I think it will be a back and forth kind of fight. Jermell's going to bring it. It's the biggest fight of his career by far. I think Canelo will get to him. I think again, I'm gonna marry it up with my previous prediction. I think Canelo Alvarez will stop Jamal Charlo between rounds 9 and 12 after a back and forth contest.
I'm just going to keep it short and simple. I'm going to say Canelo unanimous decision on points. I think just looking at Canelo's last couple of fights, he just seems to lack that finishing touch. And I think he's on the decline, and that's not a bad thing. He's been what number fight is this? What 60, 61?
53, I think it is.
53. Yeah, what's his record? Like 58, 59, 2-1?
59, 2 and 2.
2-2. Who else did he draw to?
I think there was somewhat early on in his career.
Yeah, obviously he had Glock. So yeah, either way, very, very experienced. I just think I'm just gonna keep it short and simple because we're pushed for time. Canelo Alvarez unanimous decision. Lock it in, take it to the bank, and I'll see you next week. And I'll have 2 out of 2 for predictions. Boom.
Josh is feeling himself this weekend. Guys, there's also the boxer card to check out on Sky Sports Boxing this weekend. Some of the brightest young talent in the game here in the UK with Callum Simpson, Vidal Riley, and of course, Caroline Dubois, one of my favourite up-and-coming fighters. It almost feels like we're doing her a disservice when we're saying she's up-and-coming because she's that good already. But guys, that's all we've got time for this week on the Let's Talk Boxing podcast. Keep an eye on the Simbox YouTube channel. We will have a breakdown of the Canelo Charlo fight from our guys over in the States. So keep an eye out for that. As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Whatever platform you choose to watch the Let's Talk Boxing podcast on, please leave us a review, a like, a share, a comment. It all helps. Go over to JTH Boxing. Give Josh a follow, one of the hardest working young journalists in boxing at the minute. It's always a pleasure. Guys, I'll catch you on the next one.